No, it's not.
John wrote in Greek.
Yes,
Yeah.
because when the Bible was written,
Yeah.
it was written in all those local languages. It was,
Yeah.
So when it was formalized, like in the Greek,
Yeah.
that was later on. Because when it was written down, it wasn't like because they were underground churches at that time.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
didn't have like an official way of like transmitting
So,
the Bible.
so in the Greek, it doesn't say I'm the living God.
Yeah, in the Greek
It doesn't
translation
have
of
the
the
phrase.
English, the phrase translates as I am.
The Greek's not a translation; it's the original. It's the Aramaic that's the translation.
Well, no, that's not the case because the Aramaic
Yeah.
was written down at the same time when the Greek was. So it was in the first, second century. It wasn't like it was translated
Aramaic
from
wasn't
the
written down.
Aramaic was written down because that was Jesus spoke. So they did write the Bible in that language as
New
well.
Testament's written in Greek, which is why it contains phrases that are Hebrew or Aramaic, and then the writers translate for its Greek audience as to what these words mean.
So that means that it was written in Aramaic to begin with.
No, it was written in Greek, and then the writers explain what this word means in Greek. So like when Matthew says Jesus was crucified in Golgotha, and then Matthew says Golgotha means the place of skulls. Or when Jesus says Elo, Elo, lama sabachthani, then Matthew tells you this means my God, my God. So he's writing originally in Greek, but then he's translating for his Greek audience.
Right, but what I'm saying is that in the same thing that he's saying, when it's written in Aramaic, the translation from the Aramaic, because Jesus was speaking Aramaic, right?
Yeah.
So when he said, I am the living God, he said it in what language did he say that?
Jesus never said that. John records Jesus the same before Abraham was I am, but when it gets translated into other languages such as Aramaic, in the Aramaic version there's an interpolation of I am the living God.
So you're saying that when Jesus was speaking, what was he saying when he was speaking in Aramaic?
Well, John originally wrote that Jesus said before Abraham was I am.
I am, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
but not I am the living God.
Okay, now that's what my point is, that when Jesus said that in Aramaic, and if we go to the Aramaic of this sentence, I am, before Abraham was I am, that I am translation is not an interpolation, it's like literal translation of Aramaic to English. And that literal translation would be I am the living God.
And, John didn't write his gospel in Aramaic, but his gospel was translated into Aramaic, like maybe a century or decades after. And then in that translation, someone interpolated, I'm the living God.
Right, okay, so you're saying that...
That's how I understand it,
Right,
yeah.
but this is not just in John, it's in all the Gospels that were written. So that means if you go back to Hughes...
I am the living God is in the other Gospels.
Yes, if you go to other Gospels,
okay.
Jesus says I am, in Mark or in Luke or
Oh,
somewhere,
okay, yeah.
or even in Matthew, the translation from that.
There's many I am, like Paul says, by God's grace, I am that I am.
But when Jesus is making that, see, okay, and you can make that argument, which is fine, it's a fair point. And,
Or the blind man that Jesus heals says, I am, yeah.
but it's not that kind of I am. When they are picking up stones to stone him and saying that we are stoning you because you're claiming to be God. Mere man, you're claiming to be God.
No, it's to do with Abraham. They're saying, like he's claiming to be like equal or greater to Abraham. So,
where does it say that? Sure.
So from the context, sorry. So John chapter 8, verse number 50 something. Okay, fine. John 8:52. The Jews said to him, "Now we know that you have a demon. Abraham died, as did the prophets yet. And you say, if anyone keeps my words, he will never taste death. Are you greater than our father Abraham, who died? And the prophets died. And who do you make God?" And Jesus, if I glorify myself, my glory is nothing. It is my Father who glorifies me, whom you say he is our God, but you know him not. And if you were you would know him and I would be a liar like you, but I do know him and keep his words. Your father Abraham rejoiced that he would see my day, and he saw it and was glad. And the Jews say, you are not yet 50 years old, and you have seen Abraham. And Jesus says, truly, truly, I said to you, before Abraham was, I am. And so they picked up stones, thrown at him, but Jesus hid himself and went out of the temple. So
there is another passage where they picked up stones and Jesus said to them, why do you want to stone me? And they said, because you claim to be God.
Yeah, John
That's the
10:30,
point.
yeah.
Yeah.
I and the Father are one, yeah.
So that means that that in their eyes, Jews, he is claiming to be God. And we have seen that if we read the Aramaic, it explicitly states that Jesus in the Aramaic would have said, I am.
In John, there's a common theme of misunderstanding.
Let's
So
forget
the
about
Jews
John,
are
then.
constantly misunderstanding
Let's forget
Jesus.
about John,
yeah.
but if you go to the other Gospels,
Okay.
that's the point. So, in my view, we have been looking at the Greek translation in English, and it kind of leaves out the I am the living God, but in the Aramaic
Is that because it's an interpolation rather
interpolation.
than
And
original?
Is there a way to verify that it's an interpolation?
So if you look, there's no Greek manuscript that has I'm the living God.
Well, no,
It's
it
just
wouldn't.
this Aramaic.
That's right. So the Aramaic for this, not just John, because you say John was written in Greek, right?
Yeah.
Okay, what about Matthew and Luke and the other, and the Q and the other original words?
So,
they would have been
as
written.
you
My
know,
argument would be that they would have been written in Aramaic.
So as you know, Mark is traditionally the interpreter of Peter. So he's Peter's secretary, and he wrote in Greek. And then Matthew and Luke used Mark's gospel to write their own gospels. So that means they were
But then
also
there is
written in
also a
Greek.
Q original. right?
Yeah, so Q is what's common between Matthew and Luke, and those are also originally in Greek, but may have at one time been in Aramaic. But by the time they reach Matthew and Luke, they're originally in Greek. The other reason is also Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and even John. They quote from the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Bible,
What do you
rather
mean
than
by
from
that?
the Hebrew.
Where
So
do get
you know,
that?
like verses that they quote from the Old Testament, the version is from the Greek
And when was
Septuagint,
that translated into Greek?
about 300 years before Jesus.
Okay, so why would that be an issue?
So it just shows that they were originally written in Greek.
But there was also
Rather than,
translated. But wait a minute, there was a Hebrew Old Testament as well, right?
Yeah, but they don't use the Hebrew Old Testament. They use the Greek Testament because they're originally written in Greek and they're writing for a Greek audience. But
All
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Let's give you this argument that you're trying to make is that, look, this was written in Greek and then it was translated into Aramaic. Let's take that. So what you're saying is that when Jesus was saying, I am, in the Aramaic, the translation has been now changed into English to say, I am the living God.
Not quite like the edition that you're using is an Aramaic translation with that interpolation.
When I looked into
and then
that
it's translated.
translation,
Yeah.
and I tried to figure out where it came from, is
I
it
see.
something that's recent or is it something that, and I digged into it and I found out that this was even before the Greek, even
Okay.
before the Septuagint that we have right now, this was there.
If
Now
you-
what happened
yeah.
is because that was not a lingua franca, it never got into like mass translation, or when they use the translation, they use the lingua franca. But that doesn't mean that this never existed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So
I
it
mean,
is-
if you could find a Greek manuscript with that with
I
those
wouldn't say
phrase,
there would be, no. That's not my
then
point
I'd be
at all.
interested to know that. But
Right, but then what you're saying is that you don't think that this is from the first, second century where it was
Yeah.
written in that. So if I showed you that it was written,
because
in
you
the
know
first,
there's
second century-
well, you know there's 5,000 Greek manuscripts of the New Testament.
Say what?
There's 5,000 Greek manuscripts. I think now it's about 5,300
Yeah, those are
Greek
partial
New
stuff,
Testament.
yeah.
Well, we have complete New Testament. So if you can find a single manuscript with that, I'm the living God, then
No,
that'd be
here-
interesting to see. Yeah,
So you're saying that if there's a manuscript that goes back to the time,
not necessarily, but just any Greek manuscript
Greek. Why are we talking about Greek? I'm not talking about Greek. I'm talking about Aramaic.
Well, I mean,
If I get you a
John was
manuscript or
John was
source-
written in Greek,
Okay,
not in
let's forget
Aramaic.
about
But
John.
yeah,
Let's
yeah.
forget about John.
Or any of the
Any
Gospels.
of the other
Yeah,
Gospels
yeah.
that were written in Aramaic and they predate, right? Like, or they date from the 1st century or the 2nd century.
Yeah.
Then that would tell us that this is authentic. It's not a translation of something else.
The only first century Gospels that we have are the canonical Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. We don't have like another written. I mean, you could argue maybe the Gospel of Thomas, but even Thomas is originally written in
So
Greek.
what are you saying that all the other Acts and everything, when were they written?
Acts is also first century as well,
Yeah,
but Acts isn't a gospel. It's like
Yeah, I know it is what
like
you call
the life of the
the
apostles,
life of
the disciples.
Acts of the disciple, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So no, what I'm saying is that this whole thing, because this was written, I'm just trying to make the point is that it was early enough to know that, and I can show you the proof next time. But I
Okay,
was just trying to
sure,
show you,
yeah. I'd be
that
interested.
where this comes from, and it's not like you're saying that it was taken from the Greek. My argument is that this was there at the same time because Bible was written in like Hebrew, Greek, and all that. Because
Yeah, the
because
Old
the lingua
Testament,
franca
yeah.
was Greek. Then like okay, even if they wrote it, if let's say John wrote John in Greek, but there were
Yeah.
Aramaic speakers who would take that Greek and translate it into Aramaic.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
if we have the 1st, 2nd century Aramaic translation of this, then we have an authentic, thing. It's not something that's like done afterward, where you can say this is an interpretation.
Corruptions could also occur in the first century
Well, then that's
if
a different
people are
discussion,
translating in another language.
Yeah.
or-
Right. But then
another
that
culture
has
or
its
something
own
like that.
challenges and questions and stuff like
Okay,
that. So we'll
interesting.
discuss that then. But it's nice talking to you.
No,
And,
thank you. I
Thank you
appreciate
very
it.
much.
Good, thank you. You know, there's an Aramaic Bible in which Jesus says, "I'm the living God." So it's about that. So I was saying that the Gospels were not written in Aramaic; they were written in Greek. So in the Greek, it doesn't say that, and there's no Greek manuscript that has those words.
Which words?
I am the living God.
Where did they get that?
So he was using this Aramaic translation of John's Gospel, and in that it says, "I'm the living God." But I was saying John wasn't originally written in Aramaic, written in Greek. So I'll show you. You know
So
that
the living God is in John, yeah?
in the Aramaic Bible.
In the
yeah.
Aramaic Bible. So why is
Yeah,
that
yeah.
problematic?
Sorry?
Why is that problematic?
Because John wasn't written in Aramaic, it was written in Greek.
So who wrote John in Aramaic?
So, you know, it got translated into Latin and Aramaic.